Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you doing? How have you been since our last episode? Good?
Pretty great, pretty great. Our episode today is about finding the balance point between force and flow, action and surrender. And in the last episode, you called me out for holding too tightly to my vision about publishing with a very specific publisher. And I have submitted my proposal to them now 3 times. And 3 times I've gotten very, very close to a contract, but I have ended up as an honorable mention or um so it really got me to think specifically while we were brainstorming for this episode. Am I pushing too hard? Am I waiting too long? And am I too closely tied to that vision and not opening up the space there? And where's the balance between effort and being patient and I need some advice.
So, well, to quote a certain resource that we have of of experiencing the universe as an organic entity that breathes. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but there is an ebb and flow. There's a natural ebb and flow to everything in the universe, and to the way that stars, form and die, the way that the tides rise and fall, the way that, the daylight cycle comes. There's cycles of growth. And so there's an ebb and flow. It's just natural, and it's like a natural breathing. So if we learn to breathe in rhythm with the energy, then if we are breathing in harmony, if we are in resonance with that ebb and flow, it's easier to find that balance point. So my question to you would be this: your cherished dream of having your book published with this big publishing firm is an admirable dream. I personally am rooting for you to just get your book out there, right? But then again, if the desire, if part of it is you want to reach a certain number of people, and independent publishing, sometimes books take off that way, but there's a difference between I just want to get this out there and I really want to have an audience. So when you think about this, I've submitted it now 3 times, and do you feel like you're holding your breath, or do you feel like, okay, next breath in? Like,
Mm.
are you ready to pick it up, take it in, breathe it, and you feel like, has the book, as you've submitted each time, evolved into something, which I think you shared with me that this last submission was somewhat from a different perspective. So it's growing, it's evolving. Maybe that's part of that process. And so it's like breathing in and out. But do you feel like at this point you're like holding your breath and just like, like when little kids like hold their breath, I'm gonna just hold my breath until you give me that ice cream that I want, and you're like, eventually gonna breathe, kid, you are. So that's the question. Do you feel like this persisting in this goal is creating a great deal of tension? Do you feel like it's just like, oh, is it holding you back from doing anything else? Um, in the interim of those submissions, you created your deck. It didn't stop your creative energy. Pardon me. It didn't stop your creative energy or your flow. So there is still that expression going. So that is kind of like to for you, reflect on this. What do you think? How does it feel? Does it feel like you're holding your breath, like you're holding on too tight? Or does it feel like you're really just trying to persist? What does it feel like?
It actually feels like a completely natural evolution. So the first two book proposals, which at the time I felt were really powerful and were like ready for prime time, pale in comparison to my third proposal, which is way more vulnerable and just like a significantly better piece of work. So I feel grateful for the two rejections because they allowed me to pivot toward toward a piece that is more meaningful. And that third book proposal is actually the easiest of the three to write.
Mm.
So that felt right. It felt really, really effortless and in flow to get that submitted. I'm eagerly awaiting the feedback they'll provide me to see how I should proceed with the project. Yeah, and to be fully transparent, I feel like the timing wasn't right for me to get the contract at this moment. I do feel like if I was suddenly in this big contract with a lot of money on the line, that I would have kind of crumbled from the from the pressure given my current
You have
responsibilities.
a lot on your plate right now. You have a lot going on.
Yeah,
And
so
yeah,
yeah, in many ways I actually feel like everything's right. And though I like still am holding space for that vision, I'm confident that I'm capable of achieving it with that specific publisher. Am open to other opportunities. So many of our friends say this or something better. Like yeah, I'm open to something better that could come along as well. But I do think that my story is important to share, and it's definitely going to help people once it gets into the hands of readers.
I think that you referencing the fact that this is your story and you have a story to tell. It could be, you know, when sometimes the feedback, particularly in writing, publishing, editing, the feedback is, well, the book is too long, it's too short, it needs more detail, it needs more of this. And it's I think about the stories that some of the musicians that I know that have worked to have albums produced or to sort of get to that point where they could get a recording contract, similar concept, right? And they write a song and it's the producers are like, well, it needs to be this, or it needs to be more pop, or it needs to have more of this. And then I've actually, the one group that I follow, they said in the end, the song that what they wanted us to make this song into was not the song anymore. The lyrics were there, but, or no aspects, so the lyrics were there, but the song itself musically. And so they pulled it off the album. And eventually they went independent in terms of doing their own recording. They built their own studio and released the song with some differences. And it's one of their most popular songs now. So, that says something, but it was no longer authentically what they wanted. So if you're being asked to change your story or the way you present the story, what you're presenting in a way that it no longer feels authentic, it no longer feels like you. And this is something that happens in the process of creating and visioning. And I'm in a marketing coaching group, and oftentimes, I'm given some thoughts and encouragement of like, well, could do it this way. And I'm like, I am interested in helping people with astrology. I don't have a desire to teach people to understand astrology. I could be good at it. I can teach people certain aspects about like why Mercury retrograde is not the enemy or little things like that. But there are lots of astrologers, there's lots of people out there who are brilliant astrological teachers. And yes, I can be good at teaching, but that doesn't mean because I love astrology, I want to be an astrological teacher. That doesn't feel like the right path for me to take my astrological work. So it's coming to an understanding of, we're talking about the balance point between how much some people talk about selling out. And at the point at which people sell out in order to achieve a certain goal or a certain success, that the success begins to feel really hollow. So it's finding that balance point, but you're saying, how many, and not like you have to come up with a number, but you said you're going to look at the feedback and see. And if the feedback feels like I could do that, you might consider submitting again and seeing what happens. But at what point in time does it become, I like to talk about three things: persistence versus resistance. To persist in something is to have this belief that I'm going to do this. The resistance, to be in that state balance point where you're in a state of resistance, it's like nothing is going to stop me. I want to do this. I want to have it this way. This is mine. It's like I'm going to push forward. And sometimes people do, like there is a certain amount of resistance in resisting the narrative that you should just give up. But persistence has belief, it has faith in what you're creating. Resistance is just kind of this willfulness, this like willfulness of like, this is going to happen no matter what. There's also action versus exhaustion. I love the way those two have this kind of alliterative type of sound. There's constantly taking action. But if you get to the point where the actions that you are required to take to continue to move forward, to continue to achieve something, or to continue to try to make something change is exhausting you, that is a clear sign that something is not right. And that you will get to a point of exhaustion where you will end up surrendering, which is the next thing. Actually, you're not, when you get to the point of exhaustion, you're not surrendering. My next pair of words is succumbing and surrendering. There is a difference between succumbing because you're just so exhausted and you can't do this anymore. You've been beat down to the point where you no longer have faith in the project, no longer have faith in yourself, whatever, or surrendering and saying, okay, clearly this is not meant to be. Would you please show me what is supposed to come out of this? I've been in that place myself. Well, that's kind of, that of like, okay, I'm trying so hard for this. Just tell me what it, and I also stopped asking, what am I doing wrong? Because the universe will answer every question you ask. And if you ask, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with this? You will be continually shown what you're doing wrong and what's wrong with it. If you say, what am I missing? What do I need to do? What is my next step? What will help this move forward? What do I need to change? You will get an answer. You will get signs. You'll get guidance and direction that will move you forward in the way that on the path that you're supposed to move forward on.
What's so interesting about this topic, and I definitely do not want to harp on this book proposal
No, you should have
the entire
this
episode.
world needs this book. People,
Oh yes,
when this book comes out, you will all buy it and make it a
yes.
bestseller. Do you hear us?
Oh yes, that is so true. What's so interesting is I spent the entire last month traveling. I was just all over, and there were so many experiences within that travel that were vital inclusions in the story. And it was interesting to me because I was like I need to go back and change this chapter to include this story. And it reminded me to let go and to trust in the timing of when this all happens, because the story is not complete yet. And I'm still adding to some of the chapters with the events that are unfolding in my life. So to me, I'm completely at peace with the process and the where I am creatively with the piece. And yes, I'm excited to receive the feedback, and I think it would have been beautiful as is, but it's going to be even better including the stories that weren't included in the original proposal. So that to me is like quintessential flow. It's facing the rejection or the failure, but understanding that it's just a temporary setback, and that the universal energy will correct the path forward.
So for yourself, particularly someone who, I'm hashtag retired, and so I have much more freedom in terms of how I use my time and the things that I choose to do, than I did before when I was working, and certainly, even previous to that, when I was working and also raising two daughters, which I said. I just tell people, yeah, I have two full-time jobs. And really? And I go, yeah, I'm a mom. And people would be like, no, no, you don't understand. And I'm grossly underpaid. So, I mean, although now I look back on it and I think of all the great blessings, and no, I wasn't. But, in terms of how much money was going in the bank, not so much. So, but as someone who has a lot going on your plate, how do you find the balance point like in your day? How do you balance your energy when you have so much going on? How do you figure out what to prioritize? And like you said, perhaps and it could be the universe is like, the book is really great. It's pretty much perfect the way it is. But now it's not the right time for you to go through this process because you have these commitments, and these commitments are the most important right now, and the book can wait a bit. But how do you balance yourself in your in your daily life, your daily practice, in terms of finding where to prioritize?
Well, I can't even imagine being a parent because I already feel like I have three full-time jobs. So I can't even comprehend adding a fourth to that, or being responsible for another human being beyond myself. Major props to all of the parents out there. I think
Yeah.
that's the hardest and most important job. For me, I I do time blocking. I think you know this. I'm a big proponent of time blocking. When I am most in flow, I am honoring that practice. And when I am most out of alignment and flow, I realize that I have dropped the ball and I have not been time blocking.
Mhm.
So, time blocking is just pre scheduling your blocks throughout the day so that you know that, like, you can stay present in each activity at all times throughout the day. So even if your full schedule is full, you you know, like, you're honoring that little water break, or you're honoring your creative writing time, or that Zoom meeting that's really vital. And when you pre-schedule and plot out your day and you stay faithful to and committed to that schedule, it forces you to set boundaries, and it forces you to say no, or to reprioritize other things that pop up. And to me, that's vital to stay in flow, to protecting my creative space. Um, I I also go to bed very early. To me, the restorative time is so important. So setting boundaries, saying no to things that I can't fit into my itinerary, and making sure that my personal care time is prioritized.
Mhm.
I also work really hard not to absorb people's chaos. I am a political activist, and I work as in my muggle life as for a nonprofit. So those are two of my full-time jobs. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of chaos and muck that surrounds both the nonprofit life and the political world. So making sure that I have my personal boundaries established so that I'm not getting dragged down emotionally with others is important to me. So in the times that I haven't respected those boundaries, and I've kind of failed to protect myself, I feel like I've become overly exhausted. I've become overly emotional. Like, I have times where I didn't set clear boundaries with friends and I felt abused, and then I explode, and then there's this blow up fight. Or there are times where, like, I'm like in my head spiraling about something, and then I have a near miss in a car accident. Like, those those moments of misalignment are almost always tied to my lack of boundaries. And those are wake up calls where I have to remind myself to recenter and to reestablish the boundaries that I have been dropping the ball on.
Boundaries are such an important aspect of this, particularly now when our attention is constantly being called to this issue or that disaster or this thing that's happening or this threat to our freedom or this threat toward our financial security. It's just this constant demand, this constant noise. And, we talked in several episodes earlier about how important it is to come into this place of stillness and quiet. And I have found myself needing that more and more frequently. But I think so, like, when you were talking about, with parenting, there was a point when the girls were little or much younger, and one day I went to my husband and I said, "You know what? I need a mommy's day. I need a day off." He goes with me. I said, "I need a mom's day off, a day where I do not have to be mom from when I wake up until I come, until whenever." And he goes, "Well," and at the time he was not working from home. Eventually, he ended up being able, long before it was the thing in the pandemic. So his tech office was trying to downsize, and he was like, "I'll work from home." But I said, I just need, and I said, "I know I can't necessarily take, and the weekends were a family time, right?" So what I decided to do is in the summer, I said I want one day in the summer, you know, if the girls are home and things are a little bit, you know, we can do more family times during the week. So and sometimes it would just be that I picked that's why I started painting again. I started doing art classes again. In one of the books I wrote about believing the message that I was told when I was in elementary school by my art teachers that like, yeah, you've got some talent, but you're not ever, you know, you're not ever going to be good enough to be a professional artist, right? And so, although I loved art, you know, I I put that aside. And it's not like I never picked up a paintbrush again. And I did a photography class and I did some workshops when I was in college, but I'm like, okay, I'm not going to. And also, I sort of had an interest in art school again. My parents were like, nope, that you'll be a starving artist, you'll never make it. So I went into a creative career. I actually went into film and television making, or film and video making and television, and that was my first career. But there was this, you know, claiming it and saying I'm going to go take art classes, and then you know finding that that was a very beautiful thing to have. And I claimed some space in the house in this one area, this one room we weren't using, and it had some nice light. And I set up a little art studio space there so I could go in there and paint. And so sometimes, especially my youngest daughter was really little, she was like, Mommy, I want to paint with you. And one of those little kids' easels, you know, and she would come and paint with me. But sometimes, you know, I would just be like, you know, Mom, my daughter would be like, other daughter would be like, Mommy needs time, you know, let's go play and do that. So it was, you know, respecting that honoring that boundary that I really need time for myself and creative expression. And I also think I set an example for my daughters of like it's okay to be able to go and do this. Neither of them are parents yet, but I've set, you know, that example. And so having those boundaries and respecting that and understanding, expressing what you need. In the last episode, we talked about that sense of, oh, but, you know, to ask for what I need or to take what the time I need or the space I need is selfish. And we talked about being self-full as opposed to fulfill yourself or refill up yourself, fill up your soul, as opposed to it selfish and not buying into that message that you don't have a right, that you don't have a right to have those boundaries. One of my life coach says one of my favorite expressions is not, it's not necessarily her, but she says, no, it's a complete sentence and it does not require any explanation. So no, I'm not available. No, sorry. And you don't have to say why. When you talked about the time blocking, the thing for me that for people to understand is that when you put in this is my lunch break or this is my meditation break or this is my stretch break, that's an appointment. That is an appointment you have made with yourself. And that appointment is as important and unbreakable as the appointment you have made with your dentist, which is going to take 6 months to reschedule if you try to change it, or an important client meeting or a meeting that you are required. That appointment with yourself is sacred time. And you don't have to tell anybody, you know, why or whatever the reason. Sure, sometimes things come up and you have to be a bit flexible, but you don't have to explain that to anybody. That the concept of that time, blocking that time off for yourself, that's sacred time. That's very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. I've been putting appointment on my work calendar because it's public to
Mhm,
everyone in the organization, and I stopped putting what the appointment was
mhm,
because I was like, whether it's a meeting with my boss or whether it's a meeting with a vendor or it's a haircut or a dentist appointment, they don't need like not everyone needs to know like
mhm.
exactly what exactly it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we were talking earlier about the concept of surrender, you know, surrender and succumbing and like sort of, you know, sort of giving in. It's for me, one of the things that happened, I mean, there have been many, but it's not like chronic, but there have been certain times in my life where I just kind of really resisted, like, this has got to fix, or this has got to change, or it's got to be this way, you know, and I've ended up, you know, having that, as we in tarot, that tower card moment, you know, of like in your face, the awakening, the awareness, and you know. But there are other moments where in my life where when I reach that point and I'm like, I just, okay, like I was saying earlier, just, okay, fine. I'm not getting this. I can't figure it. This isn't working. Just show me what needs to be done. And there have been times when I've realized is all of the things that I thought were the external obstacles were a physical manifestation, an actual manifestation, an energetic manifestation of something within myself. And I was just getting in my own way. And most of the time, if I would just step back and say, okay, because we forget to co create, we're not doing this alone. The universe is constantly conspiring in our favor, and we says, "Nope, I gotta do it myself." Particularly people who have been raised, I'm the oldest, I'm also the only daughter, I'm super responsible. It's like everything is my responsibility. And learning to delegate or designate things, or, not everything is my daughter's the mom. You don't have to save the whole world. You don't have to fix all the problems, climate change and women's rights. And they go, yeah, right, you're right. Okay. So what is my piece? The balance point is where do I fit into this? I like to think about, we used to play this game when I was a kid in playground, and you don't see teeter-totters, those teeter-totter things anymore, those seesaw things. They made too many people got knocked on the head with them or fell off of them. So you hardly ever see them anymore, right? But one of my favorite games is like this, where you start on one side where it's down and you walk across. And the game was to try and get in the middle and stand in the middle and stay balanced for as long as possible. Sometimes they would never let us do this in the schoolyard, but at our playground in our neighborhood, we would have these competitions. Like two kids would get up there and stand there and like balance, and like who's going to give up, And at a certain point, maintain the balance. But then it's like I gotta scratch my ear, or you get it that your legs are getting tired, or But it's that holding that. How do you? But that what I'm talking about is not so much the game as it is that feeling, the actual feeling in your body of being in balance. What does you feel physically? What does it feel like in your body when you are balanced? And the time to assess that is when you're feeling really good. Not necessarily super ecstatic. I mean, ecstatic is nice, it's great, bliss is wonderful. But when you're just feeling good, those moments when you're like, wow, this has been a great day. Everything done, the laundry's done, the groceries done, and I've got like 30 minutes and I can sit down and read the next chapter in this book, or write the next chapter in my book, whatever. Everything just feels like it's very good. It's in flow. And or you wake up in the morning feeling really well refreshed and everything's good. And there's not a lot on your plate that day. And it's like, huh, what am I going to do? That is the moment when you should connect with yourself and say, what does my body feel like? This is a great practice. How am I breathing? Where do I feel this? There's no tension in my body. And that's what it feels like physically to be in balance. When you are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in balance, when you are energetically in balance, your body will feel like that. When you're not, your body will feel a bit off. You'll feel the tension somewhere, depending on, where in your body you hold mental tension, emotional tension, whatever. So when you're trying to make a decision or figure out whether to go forward and whether to keep pushing, you can push when you're in a state of balance. You can. You can continue to persist and push forward. It's energetically, you'll still feel as if you're in that. But when people talk about what does it mean to be in alignment, that's what it means. That's what it feels like. And we've been talking so much about the importance of feeling. And I think that in spiritual practices, we talk a lot about meditating, and all of those things are great. I learned in meditation that I when I tried to study and practice Zen, the thing that I learned is my mind could only be still and quiet for as long as my butt was comfortable, which isn't usually, don't necessarily feel really comfortable sitting. I've gotten a little better at it. But then I discovered Tai Chi, which is movement, and that's a kind of meditative movement and walking meditation. And that works for me. It's that I'm able to quiet my mind and focus, because in Tai Chi, you're constantly focusing on moving in a very balanced and harmonious and very steady way, and you are really focusing on being within your body in that moment, and you can't let your mind go wandering off. When you do, all of a sudden you find, oh, this hand is moving too fast or whatever. So it's those practices, but we don't, as a spiritual practice, we don't associate or correlate balance with alignment. And to be in alignment is to be physically, mentally, and emotionally to feel like we're in balance.
Yeah. And especially as an advocate for time blocking, I want to just say that balance is not just the state of your calendar. It's not like how much free time you have, but truly it's about listening to your body, tracking your energy, and making sure that you are in that space of alignment. Do you have any closing remarks, Deborah?
I think what I would really like, because we've been inviting all of our listeners, all of you out there, we invited you to dream big and to hold the space for it. What I would invite you to do is between now and, even the next couple of weeks, try to pay attention. Not try, pay attention. This is a directive. Pay attention to those moments. Stop when you're in the middle of doing something and say, "How do I feel when I'm standing there washing the dishes or loading the dishes? Do I feel like I'm just throwing everything? Oh my God, I've got so much to do." Or do you feel like we talked about being present in the moment, but unloading the dishes. How am I feeling right now? I'm thinking about this. Am I feeling like I'm in balance with this? To to try to give yourself, maybe time block it once a day. Put a little alarm on your phone at, like, a certain time of the day, not like when you're likely to be in a meeting, or maybe that's a good reason. Oh, I gotta leave. Yeah, step out for this one. But try to periodically throughout the day stop and ask, how imbalanced do I feel right now? And what is imbalance? Oh, I'm tired, I'm hungry, or I'm worrying so much about this, or I'm really distracted and confused. I gotta stop because I keep misplacing things. Stop and be aware of where you feel imbalanced, physically, mentally, emotionally. Also reflect maybe at the end of the day before you go to sleep. Just lay there. Try to do no judgment. How balanced, was my energy in how did I balance my time? Was I overgiving? How well did I establish and maintain the boundaries that I needed for my personal space? So let the concept of being aware of balance, because if you're out of balance and you're not aware of it, that's when you trip and fall. I discovered this a few days ago, actually.
It took all my willpower not to mention that story.
Yeah, I was total distraction, and I was also mentally and emotionally very like I was like, this has got to stop, and bam, it stopped. Like, I'm fine, nothing broken. But being aware of how much time we spend out of balance helps us in a non-judgmental way, and trying to determine what things helps bring you back into balance. What are the things that bring you back into balance that help? It could be breathing. It could be, when I'm distracted, but I hear a bird, I'm like, what bird was that? And I stop because I do a bit of bird watching, and I focus on that bird. It distracts me from all of the other distractions, and I love the sound of birds. And I sort of get pulled back into that moment. So sometimes I'll be like, I'm just gonna go where I live in Portland. There's a lovely little trail, and there's a million things I really should do. And in the middle of the day, I'm like, nope, I'm gonna go walk down, I'm gonna go to that trail. I'll often say it's the middle of the day. There's not gonna be a lot of birds singing. There'll always be at least one for me. So take some time out. I invite you to really explore the extent to which you are in balance, and you are actually make balance a spiritual practice in your daily life.
Awesome. And I want us all to remember balance is not a fixed point that we arrive at. It's alive and it shifts every day, moment to moment, and that's totally okay. It's not a goal that we can get right. It's something that we have to build a relationship with.
Yep, it's like energy. Energy is never stagnant. It's constantly in motion. And so again, back to the ebb and flow. As the energy ebb and flows, and as your experience of the day, but the way in which you're going to be balanced is going to shift. If something dramatic happens, like you trip and fall, your balance is going to be thrown off, like literally for a bit. So it's inviting yourself to let the concept of being balanced be dynamic and flexible.
Absolutely. Our next episode is going to be Walking Your Path, Honoring Theirs, Spiritual Alignment and Sovereignty.
So we'll see you then.